right, we're back on the Slide Podcast, and we're joined today with Jake Banwart. So, Jake, how you doing, sir?
Good. How about you?
I'm doing good, man. I'm doing it solo today. So, for everyone out there listening, my counterparts are busy in their workday, and so I get the opportunity to sit here and talk to Jake. So, Jake, man, you're from Indianapolis. You reached out to us, wanted to definitely hop on. And since we've been talking, there's a lot of cool things that I definitely want to get into. But tell us a little bit about yourself, man. Where are you from? How you got started in baseball?
For sure. So I actually grew up northwest suburbs of Chicago. Was the youngest of three, and when we grew up, things were different. You just played wiffle ball all the time, played in
That's
the
right.
neighborhood all the time, and played travel ball, did all of that. Did not play in college. I kind of hated the game, to be honest with you. There was a lot of relationships that were hurt due to baseball, and it just became a job at an early age for me, and really lost that joy. But I majored in education. I was starting teaching at a small school, and they needed help on the baseball coaching staff, and I knew that that was my in to get my first big boy job. So I said, "Let's go! I'll do it. Like I'll whatever's going to give me this job." So got involved with the game again, and it's funny because I was already coaching basketball at that point, but realized through getting back into the game how much like baseball was never the issue. I always loved baseball. It was just the pressure, the people, the things around the game that caused me to fall away from it. So got involved, coach high school there for a couple of years, got involved with coaching travel. And we had a really good travel team in an okay program. And we just kind of made a decision to start our own thing. I was young and dumb. I was 23 when we started it. So we're 9 years in. At this point, we have 38 teams between baseball and softball. I moved from that school, was a head coach at a different school, and won a county championship there and a conference championship there. Then moved down to the current school that I'm at, and we just won county this year. Was able and fortunate enough to win a state championship in my first coaching gig. So have had some field success. And it's funny, man, the more on-field success that you have, the more you realize that that is just a result of the process that you put your team through and the culture that you build. And like, it doesn't happen by accident. So at this point, I stopped teaching. I've been out of the classroom for 2 years. Baseball is full-time. I run extra innings Indy South with a few other owners on the south side of Indianapolis. Work with a group out of New York, as well as some people in Indy, to provide some online coaches training and player training nationwide. So that's with Dugout Coalition. And then I'm the owner of Baseball and Fast Pitch Academics Midwest, which is our travel program, and the head coach at Perry Meridian High School. So I'm all over the map too. I live in season, right? Of in season, off season, if it's training or games or whatever it is. But it went from wanting nothing to do with baseball to baseball essentially being the whole life that I get to live at this point, which is awesome.
Yeah.
I have kids, 8-year-old and 6-year-old, and the wife, and they're extremely supportive. So it's a family thing at this point for sure.
Awesome. Well, I want to go back to your high school because I went through something very similar to that. So baseball was the world to me. And
Yeah,
as I got into ninth, 10th grade, I'm playing JV, and like you said, the pressures of other people around me, and I won't call
for
out
sure.
specifics, but like I began to hate the game. I
Yep.
didn't want to do it. And so I found another sport for me to be a part of, and that was track. And I ended up pole vaulting. So
There
I
you go.
went from
There you
baseball to pole vaulting. So
go.
but I found that, love again for the game. But like, what did you really experience going through your high school years? Because I know that there's kids out there that's as going through currently the same things that probably you and I did.
For sure.
What would you tell those individuals as they're, struggling with outside external pressures outside of the field? How would you
Yeah.
tell them to handle it?
Man, pressure is always going to be there. And I think, like, looking back, if I could tell my past self anything, and I'll say this up front, I don't regret giving up the game when I did. I think it's made me who I am.
Yeah.
But looking back, I also think that I could have handled it in a better way. Hindsight 2020, of course. But for anybody out there, like for me, I was very much like I knew who I wanted to be off the field, and it felt like my entire identity was who I was on the field. And there was something missing there. I mean, baseball is a great game, and to have part of your identity in that isn't an issue. But when it becomes who you are, anything that you're doing, that didn't sit well with me. And I was surrounded by a lot of people who had different views and different beliefs on things. And at high school, you got a ton of temptations around you at all times.
That's right.
And people were making poor choices. And I didn't take part in any of those things. And it was just something that I wanted to surround myself with better people. So, looking back, I think there was value in that decision. But I just had Champions Edge in here. They're from Missouri. They're up at our facility right now for a tournament, and just had a chance to speak with their guys. And the biggest thing I told them is just the direction in which you live matters. And there's two big ways that you can live. The first one that most people live in is have, do, be, meaning, hey, I have to have these things provided to me, the right circumstance, the right situation, the right people around me. And once I have those things, then I can do the things that I want to do. And then by doing the things I want to do, I'm going to become the person that I want to become. And the biggest issue with living that way is like you're leaving it all up to circumstance. If you never get past the have and you don't have the opportunities in front of you that you feel like you need or you want, then there never is a do. So, you get all these adults that talk about all the things that they wish they would have done and the potential that they had. I get it. I get how people end up there, but it's solely the way that they're living. So if we're able to flip that, and this is the challenge to all young players and really adults, like this can change the entire trajectory of life when you really understand it. But if you can live be, do, have, meaning like you work with the end in mind, you know what your goals are, you know what you want to become, you know where you want to go. Once you know that, then the task is every day wake up and make decisions that person would do. Go and be that person. You want to be a D1 baseball player? Be a D1 baseball player today. You want to be an incredible person? Go and be an incredible person today. Make decisions that person would make that are going to make your future self proud. And by being that, you're going to see the opportunities that have always been in front of you, but you just haven't noticed to do the things that person would do. And by being that and doing that, suddenly you realize that you have the things that you wanted all along. But we can't start. That's the biggest piece, is just like trajectory and direction of how you're going about life, cutting out those excuses, taking ownership, putting it back on yourself. And I think if I would have had that mentality, I would have continued playing. But at the time, I just wasn't in a place to understand that and made the best decision for me based on the circumstance that I was in and that I felt like had to dictate a decision.
I agree completely. I think, and like you said, I have regrets. I wish I'd stayed, but I also am glad that I didn't when I did, because I have a different point of view for kids now. And I have a teachable point of view, and I have an ability to say, hey, here are the things that troubled me, and here was my result. But I think what you said though is wake up with a purpose. And
yes,
I've said this. I worked retail for 25 years, man, and I always told people you got to do the job before you get the job. And you gotta do the role before you get the role, because you wake up one morning and someone says, hey, Jake, you're a D1 superstar now what? Like, have you put the work in? Are you prepared for it? And I think that's where parents and kids, everyone gets just lost in their journey, is like, wake up in the morning with a purpose, and whether it's just a structured routine or do something and work towards a goal, because like where you want to be 5 years from now, all right, start working towards it. What are you doing now to prepare for it? So I love that, man. That's pretty awesome. How do the kids react when you give them some of those stories?
Man, I mean, it's funny because they're in high school, right? So you get some kids that are
more than cool. They know more than us. So
right. Yeah. And you always get some that are too cool to really listen, comprehend, and understand what you're doing. So it's really like your ability to listen is one of two things. You're either listening to respond or listening to understand, right? And I'm really good friends with Austin Byler. He runs Major League University. He does an incredible job with mindset training too, and him and I have become really close. And one of the things that he talks about is when he has an opportunity to speak, the goal is to impact one person. And if you can make a difference in one person, then you're successful. But you can't get caught up standing in front of people and putting yourself out there with, man, are all 15 of these kids, or you get a chance to speak at a school, are all 100 of these kids going to take something from it? Because they're either going to take something or they're not, and that's on them. But the value that you're providing is the same. And that's been my challenge, is with not teaching anymore. I've told people all the time, I don't miss being a teacher. I don't miss emails or meetings that could have been emails. I don't miss the disciplinary stuff, the day-to-day, but I do miss the interaction with the kids every day. I do miss the ability to be in front of a group of teenage kids and challenge them on who they are and where they're going in their lives. So my challenge to myself over the past year has been, if there's ever an opportunity to speak, I'm going to take it. I'm not going to say no. I don't care if it's a baseball team, a water polo team, a retail bit, like whatever it is, I'm speaking, I'm going, and I'm going to challenge myself. So in doing that, I've found that, a lot of these kids are more than willing to listen and to hear something. The problem is they just got to trust you first. And that's the key. And that's hard to do when you're talking to somebody for the first time, or you only get them for an hour. But the more relatable and honest you are, the easier it is for them to understand. I'm just under the impression like passion is a universal language. You can talk to me about something that I don't care about, but if you're passionate about it, I could listen to you talk about it for hours because you care. So if you can express that, then I think you got your in to any audience that you're talking to, where they're going to be at least more willing and open to receiving whatever it is that you're bringing them.
Yeah, I think, and that's what I've found as leading individuals, kids, the more that, the trust is huge. All right. And,
For sure.
There's a lot that goes into being a baseball coach. And that's my struggle with the younger, the younger, with rec ball situations is
sure
we're not necessarily always setting the right example for the kids or helping them define what success truly is. And success is not what that score says at the end of that game.
No.
And I see so many people that focus on that. And as a coach, this is my squirrel topic, is I don't even keep up score when I'm, when we're out there on the field, right? Because at the end of the day, we get to the end of the game and the kids are like, did we win? I'm like,
sure.
We'll tell you when we're done, because I want you to play hard no matter if you're playing up 10 or down 10.
Yep.
And, it's a struggle, but, being a coach is super freaking important, man. And like, I wish and I want more people to take that role of a coach a lot more serious, because you can grab a kid and, you've stood and talked to a group of kids and you notice that one kid in that group that you catch their attention.
Yep.
That's that kid that you can help.
For sure.
And there's a lot of good stuff that can come from great coaches. So now I know you're working on some mindset stuff.
For sure.
So obviously your past is sort of like led you in that direction. What are you doing now with mindset training?
Yeah. So when I taught, I taught secondary social studies, education, and psychology. So I've always been into mindset, psychology, how people think and act and react. And I could just go to an airport and watch people for hours. I think that would be that's a fun date night right there. I'm going to get the wife in. But I'm doing a few different things. So I travel a little bit and speak at different schools to different teams. I have 2 different online mindset training programs that are literally 7 days a week for 8 weeks. It's a Google Classroom that's put together with daily tasks that take somebody probably 15 minutes a day between the video on there and then responses. And that's a great place to get started, is just developing some type of routine. Especially as kids transition into the summer, you go from being at school every day, you have this regimented routine, and now you have all this freedom of the summer. And it's really easy to sleep until 12, get up, be groggy, show up at your game, have no energy. Like they need to develop something. So the online stuff is great for that. The first 8 weeks really dives into creating a schedule, setting goals, setting routines, all of those things. And then the second 8 weeks is really meant for like either in season or preseason of like, how do we track our goals? What does that look like? How do we make sure that we're getting 1% better every single day? Like tangibly, what does 1% better mean? I think that's in baseball. There's a lot of these hot terms that are thrown out there and they're good. But if you tell a kid to get 1% better and he doesn't know what it means, yeah, they don't know where to start. So like the definition is really simple. 1% of your day is 14 minutes and 25 seconds. So if you want to get 1% better, find that 14-25 that you can do something for your own mindset to make yourself better. And that could be visualization. That could be writing. That could be reading a book. Like literally a million things that you could do. I make everybody take cold showers all 8 weeks. They hate me for that. But
wow, really?
I'm a big cold shower guy. And then on top of that, I have one-on-one clients. So I have a basketball player at NC State and a couple D1 pitchers that I work with, and then some high school and middle school kids as well. And the one-on-one is great, but anybody who's never done mindset stuff, doing like the online is a really good segue, because if kids aren't open to it and they don't discuss or bring up the things that they're struggling with, then there's really no progress that can be made. And that's
Yeah.
the biggest battle. Like people, it's a funny thing because you talk about going to see a hitting instructor, right?
Hmm.
And nobody ever says, well, my swing's really good now, so I'm going to stop going to hitting. Like
Right.
I'm going to stop.
Yep.
But people don't want to develop their mindset until they feel like their mindset's a problem.
Yep.
So it's all reactionary rather than proactive work. And even at the highest levels now, you're seeing that the best in the games are the people who are taking time to actively train their brain and make sure that there's a mind body connection, make sure that they understand their self talk, their affirmations, the way that their body language projects. Like all of that stuff matters just as much as your ability to turn a double play. So getting people bought into that is huge. Luckily, with our 38 teams, we have everybody go through 8 hours in the offseason of peak performance training. And then they have 8 hours of baseball, softball IQ training. And they are tested on that before they're ever cleared to play. So we're a little crazy on the
I
travels
like that.
with some of
Yeah.
that. But, when the name of the program is Baseball and Fast Pitch Academics Midwest, we feel like it's important for us to teach the academic side of the game of both on field and how do you train yourself to be a quality individual, to be on routine, to know your schedules, to actually do the things that you're going to say you're going to do. Because motivation is just so fleeting. Like we've all had times that we're like extremely motivated. We get
Yep.
everything done. But what happens when you're not? Like that's where that discipline and consistency comes in. And we say those things, but again, it's teaching high school kids or middle school kids how to develop discipline and consistency, how to place value on the things that matter. And it's not these incredibly difficult concepts to grasp. It's just concepts that are easy to explain that most people haven't heard or are not talked about on a day-to-day basis that really show the biggest growth with them from the mindset side.
Wow. So what age do you recommend like parents really starting to help like build that confidence in their child, build that, that little swag that confidence gives them? What
Yeah,
age do you think?
man, it's so funny. I think as soon as they can communicate back to you, there are things that you can do to help them already with their mindset. That said, the level of depth that you're going to go to with a 6-year-old, very different than what you're going to get into with a high schooler, right? But
Right.
It's been fun for me with a 6-year-old and an 8-year-old at home because I've never coached my own kids. We started the program before they were old enough to play, and I had worked with primarily middle school to college level athletes. So
Gotcha.
at this point, I can tell you, like my 8-year-old has a true 1 hour morning routine that she has owned. And she has a checklist in her room of all the things that she's going to do every single morning. And she's knocking that out on a day-to-day basis. And it's nothing crazy, but it includes, she starts her day with the dance party. She's got an Alexa in her room. She wakes up. The first thing, let's get the body moving. Like, let's feel good and be joyful. So she starts with just one of her favorite songs. She just dances for 3 minutes, gets after it.
Okay.
Then it's, showers. She's going to brush her teeth, do her hair, like the basics. She goes back. She's got 10 minutes of reading. And Jocko Willink has really good books. There's also some others that are readable for 8-year-old kids. And the concepts are easy to grasp that get them started in the mindset stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So, she's reading and then she has some writing, and all she writes is her big goal, which right now she's writing every day. I am a Division I softball player. That's the goal that she has set. Now, granted, if she comes to me at 10 and says, I don't want to do that anymore, that's okay. But if that's the goal right now, like let's push towards that goal. And then her small goal, which is different based on, the day that she's on, what she has that day, whether it's training or if she has softball at all. And then she writes down 3 positive affirmations about herself, just things that she believes to be true about herself that she can take pride in, and then 3 things that she's thankful for. And then she's got 15 minutes of softball work. And that's, we are big Valley glove people. So she uses Valley flat glove. She'll knock out some hop reads with the tennis ball, just funnel press of long hop, short hop stuff, or she'll go hit off the tee. She really has some freedom within that softball work, but it's an hour every morning. And I can tell you, since she started doing that, her focus just and engagement in any conversation that she's in, whether it's softball related or not, has improved because she's just more present in the moment.
Right.
It's really easy at those ages to get up, watch cartoons for 3 hours, and then suddenly like you're groggy and you don't want to get up or do anything. So even at those age groups, there are things that you can do to get it outlined. Our 6-year-old, his routine is simple. He writes the alphabet every day, brushes his teeth, washes his face. Simple. So his is like 10 minutes. but it's a start, and it's
Yeah.
just developing some type of structure that's going to serve them in the long run.
I like that. I like that a lot. So I've got an 8-year-old son, and we're starting to work with him on some mental, the mental mindset, because he has struggled a lot. And I know our listeners have heard this since we've started, but he's struggled with confidence. He's so hard on himself that he becomes his worst enemy. Obviously, we hear that saying all the time, and he's starting, to shift and move through some of those frustrations that he has, and it's pretty freaking amazing to watch. I'm gonna tell you, he was a kid that we didn't think travel ball was the right way for him. We plays in rec right now, but he started this season to really want more.
Yeah.
And I, with my experience of what I went through, look, I'm letting him pace himself, and I'm not gonna put him in anything that when you're ready for travel, like when a kid says I want to play travel ball, like that's just like there's a lot more that comes with that. So and today I see so much where it's like, well, hey, let's just start a travel ball team, and then there you are. But in my mindset, when you go travel, like you've got to be built a certain way. You got to be ready, because the competitive level, like prepare to play the best. And but I'm starting to see some of that from him, and I'd love to get some more information from you, of course. Anything I can do to help him, and that's a benefit of the show, obviously, is me getting to learn and exposed to all this new stuff. I'm going to use every bit of it on my kid. So he's the test bunny.
What have you seen? Have you noticed a difference in like why he is more confident, or what has maybe led to him feeling that way on the field?
I think it's had a lot to do with his personal skills. Like he's always been a kid that kid's so much better than me. I'm never going to be that good. And I'm like, who says that? Like if you say, and I have this like horrible. It's probably like I'm not a good dad when I say this, but like he was saying something the other day, and he's like, I'm never going to catch a ball like that. We're never going to do that. I'm like, well, cool. Go put your glove down, and we'll just stay here. And like we don't even have to go pay $5 to get in that gate fee if you already quitting. So like, and he gets frustrated with me, and I'm like, but look, dude, you're already putting yourself in a bad situation. Like I need you thinking, hey, what are we going to go do today? And here's what I'm going to do today. Versus I've already quit before I've started.
Right.
And as his skills have gotten better, I've seen him, defeat is not as hard for him, which is very odd. Because as his skills were at the lower end of the scale, failure was horrible for him. But as his skills have moved, failure is okay. And and that's been a learning lesson for me. So yeah.
Well, I think, and I would guess, because most kids that are like that, if he's on that team and a teammate makes a mistake, he's probably the first one to be a good teammate, pick that kid up, move on from it.
He did yesterday. So, he actually, he walked over to a kid that was upset.
Those kids are tough, and I would say like the biggest thing I tell my players that struggle with something similar when it comes to personal confidence is like they have to give themselves the same grace that they give their teammates. Like it is okay to make a mistake. And the more that they stack it and they're still thinking about it, the easier it is to make the next mistake. So like giving them the analogy of dishes is so helpful, because you're like, listen, you drink out of one cup, you take it over and you wash that cup, takes you 10 seconds, right? But you stack that cup and then you put more dirty dishes in there, and suddenly you're looking at the dishes and like you don't want to do them because it's going to take you forever to deal with everything in there. Well, the same thing happens with our thoughts. If we have one negative thought, well, I stink, and we don't wash that and clear it, and it's still there, we just stack on top of that, and it gets to a point that like mentally we're not even in a place that we can think clearly and move past those things because there's so many negatives there. So even as simple as like looking at each separate instance as its own thing can be really, really beneficial. I think, you hear about baseball and slumps and all of these things. Like there's no such thing. You're either 0 for 1 or 1 for 1, period. And maybe you have 4 opportunities to do that in that game, but you can't be 0 for 20 when each at bat is a separate occasion. So it's just isolated. Like getting in the thought process, but I love what you do with it. Like I'm the same way. Like if you're going to quit on yourself, I'm not going to fight for you.
Yeah.
You know,
I can't
if you're
invest
willing to
more
fight
in
for
you.
yourself, I will fight for you tooth and nail. But the moment that you're like, well, I can't, then okay, then we can stop trying. Like
Yeah.
if you've already made that decision, I can't change that. We can move on.
Yeah. Well, and I've always told employees, players, like, I'm not going to invest more into you than what you're willing to invest into yourself.
Yep.
And that just comes with whether it's practice, whether it's, how you work as a team, all of those things. Like you've got to invest in yourself. And like you said, like I'll do everything.
Yep.
Look, you want to swing a $400 bat, you better go show me all of this stuff to
Sure.
earn those kind of things. And but no, we're just at the beginning stages of it, I think I would say, with him. So I definitely, we had the Mental Game Academy on 2 shows ago, and she really gave me some. Larissa gave me some really good tips. She actually did a call with him, and so we're testing out some new things, and so it's exciting, man. And I hope everyone listening right now, even if your kid is like the number one kid on the team and is resilient, everyone is going to hit that point at some point in time in their life, and help them now. Give them the resources, teach them to communicate now about those things so that when it does get hard, they're able to communicate and talk to you about their feelings. So,
Yep. It's all tools to the toolbox, right? We talk about it with swing, with defensive plays and glove patterns, all these. It's the same with your mind. Yeah. You just need to have the tools and figure out, which ones to use when and what works for you. And everybody's going to be slightly different, but it's a matter of investing into that process where most people don't do it at all. And then you don't have any tools when things get hard.
Right.
If you have tools and you're just trying to figure out which one to use, you're still ahead of the game.
So talk us through a little bit now. I know before we started, you were talking about, where you are currently in, the season. So you're a high school coach. And you guys take kids and you start them at as early as 13. You have high school coaches. Walk us through this program that you guys have and how it works.
The high school side and travel side are separate. But it's a lot of similar similar area. So our facility is 10 minutes from the high school that I coach at. So from the travel side, basically our goal, and we have most of these spots filled, but the goal is that from 15U, so freshman year of high school, through 17U, which is the last big recruiting year, we have coaches that move up with these teams, right? So at the 16U age group right now, we have 3 different teams, and they're all very good. And they all have coaches on the staff that are high school coaches, right? So our goal is that we're not starting over every year. If we really want to invest in players, develop relationships with them, and help them get to the next level, we need to be able to talk to college coaches about these guys for more than just what they can do on a baseball field. We got to know them and know their families. So, we'll take a group. If we have them at 15, we'll move up with that group at 16. We'll move up with that group at 17, and then we'll drop back down to 15 to take that next incoming class. And then at 13 and 14, really similar. What we do is we take a lot of our previous players. It's getting to that point now that we've been around long enough that we can do that. So we have one right now and hoping to bring on a couple more that are the head coaches of our 13U and 14U groups.
Oh, that is so awesome.
Well, 13U, and then they move up to 14. They work hand in hand with the high school age coach who's going to take that group at 15. But then after 14, they drop right back down to 13. So they're really our high school prep age groups. And then our high school age groups are really our college prep age groups. And one of the things that's hard with travel is it used to be everybody that's playing travel is elite, right? And it's just not that way anymore. But I think when people talk about like, well, it's just not that way and anybody can play travel, like there's this negativity to it, when the reality is as they get older, if kids want to play baseball, there's not a ton of options based on, different parts in the country. But if you're not playing travel, there's not a lot of options for you to play.
Yeah, you're
not
playing.
Have to. So we have 3 different tracks that players can be on. The first one is our signature track. And that includes signature and prime teams, which would be teams that are playing, AAA major, open level, national level competition at high school. Those are the guys that are going to be our high level college prospects from the signature teams and the prime teams. Our diamond track is more of that AA level going up through it, which, our job is to help them get ready to be good enough to play at the high school level.
Right.
Kids that need that. And then we have the gold track, which is more of that single A level. And honestly, most of our gold teams are like 8U through 10U, 11U sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
But really, hey, we just need you to love the game. Like, we need you to fall in love with playing the game and fall in love with getting better. And if you do that, the way that we develop, we're confident that we'll move them to that double A, and we're able to move those kids up to that triple A major. But it's the process. So, for travel programs, one of the things we're most proud of is our retention rate is really high because we do spend a ton of time training, and we want to keep kids in the program and we want to develop them. So that part is great. And we feed into a lot of the high schools in the Indianapolis circle, because we have a lot of coaches from this area. So that's our primary area that we pull kids from. But, the nice thing is we're able to send kids then to their high school programs knowing that all offseason they've been developed as infielders, they've been developed as outfielders, pitchers, hitters, mindset wise. We really try to provide that so that the high school coaches and then college coaches know that they're at least going to get a disciplined and smart player in what they're doing. Skill level could be all over the map, but they're going to be better than they were before, and they're coming from a place that values them as people.
What do you notice recruiters are saying about that? Like, I'm sure the recruiters have to love what you guys are doing, because you're around the knowledge and like you said, outside of the baseball field, these kids.
Yeah, it's really funny because we're still so young. We're going into year 10 next year, which sounds like a while, but we're in a pretty saturated area for travel baseball, and that's not a bad thing at all. I think we're 30 minutes from Grand Park, which is 20 fields, all turf, like one of the biggest complexes in the country. Yep. So the luxury is we don't have to travel as much as some travel teams because everyone's coming to us. Yep. But the downfall is because that's so close, there's so many teams in this area. So for us, like most teams that start last 3 years or less, we've gotten past that on both baseball and softball. So we're heading into year 10, and we've had, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4 graduating classes at this point. Our last graduating class, so our 2022s, we had 24 kids from that class signed to play college ball, and 11 of those were Division I college players.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it was awesome. It was awesome. Now, every class is not like that, and that's okay because this 23 class is going to have about the same number playing in college, and we might have 4 to 5 Division I. And that's part of growing the business and growing the program is you're going to have years where the talent maybe just isn't as deep, but those kids, like we take just as much pride in the kid that signs to play NAIA or D3, that's the right school and right fit and good for their family, as we do somebody signing D1. Like it's about what the kid and the family needs. And I think you get a lot of places where it seems like the D1 guys are the only guys that are getting attention. Like our job is to put them in a good position to get an education, do the things they want to do, and continue to play baseball. So we had one go to Brown, and they were extremely interested in the baseball IQ rating that we put together and the training that we do. There are multiple colleges that have used what we call our win and P-win ratings. So I'm a big process guy. I'm also a big numbers guy. And I think having numbers and data can help you dictate what you need to work on. So we actually developed 2 metrics that have successfully, outside of Ohtani, they have successfully predicted Major League Baseball's MVP and Cy Young for the last 9 seasons. And basically, it's an adjusted ERA. The problem with ERA is you walk 3, you strike out 3. Your ERA is 0, you look like you're perfect. The problem with WHIP is you give up a bomb or you give up a single, still counts as 1, right? So all these stats have value, but there's not one place to look. So you ask any coach and they'll tell you what they value, but there's no consistency there. So our P-win rating essentially takes the total bases that a pitcher gives up, takes the walks or hit by pitch, so the free bases that they give up, takes pretty much all their wild pitches, like all the negatives that they would do, and then the strikeout rate that they have, and compiles all of that, valuing each base earned as 0.25 or a quarter of a run, and spits out an adjusted ERA of really what they should do. So it becomes a predictive model for us of how guys are actually performing, because the eyes lie to you a little bit when you see, an ERA or they struck out 7, but they walked 7. It's like, well, it's not ideal. And then on the position player side, same thing. Like this started because we actually got into an heated argument over who is a better offensive player between Ricky Henderson and Alex Rodriguez. And then it became, okay, who is the better player overall?
Oh, now I want to know that one.
You know what? They're just so different, right?
Yeah.
Everybody was like, well, it has to be A-Rod.
Yeah, and they are different.
from running the numbers, it was A-Rod, but over the course of like their primary seasons, it was A-Rod by a very small margin. Because basically what this number calculates is every base you earn is 0.25. You hit a double, you get 0.5. But every base you steal is 0.25. Because as a coach, I don't care if you hit a double or you get pegged and steal second. You still create 2 bases, right? So it takes off, all RBIs, runs, things that a lot of times you need other players to help you with. Right. And it looks at all the objective things that you can do on the baseball field, including errors, including plus defensive plays, everything from an offensive and defensive side, and essentially shoots out a number that tells you how many bases you have earned or how many runs you've earned over the course of the season, but then breaks that down to what your average is per game. So we've been able to determine what a high level average is for a player to earn per game, what that looks like at the MLB level. So it's kind of cool. We can give them player comps now of what their value is in comparison to the guys they look up to. So that's kind of fun.
What's a good number? Give me an example.
So anything 0.4 or above, meaning that they're earning, a base is 0.25. So a little bit less than 2 total bases in a game is highly productive, as goofy as that is. So, you lose points for striking out because you're eliminating any opportunity to get on base. And then you get the 0.25 for a single, stolen base, anything like that. And then you lose 0.25 for an error because you just gave up a base. Right. So over the course of a season, it's really easy to think like, well, I could get 0.5 easily. I just got to hit a single and steal a bag. But over the course of a season, there's going to be rofer, right? So that's just basically how it works out. So anything 4 and above is good. Anything 0.7 and above is like MVP type numbers. The highest that I was able to find was Barry Bonds in the year after he broke the home run record, when he was intentionally walked and had more intentional walks than he had at bats, right, on that season. And his was like 1.04 a game. So alone, he walked up to the plate in those games and he earned more than a run by himself in every single game on average, which is insane. At the major level. Yeah. I'll send you the algorithm and everything for it. We run it for our teams. We run it for individual players. And then actually when we do end of season awards, that's a number that's brought in as we discuss MVP and all of that for our program awards too.
Well, and you can show specific value to the player.
Yeah.
Like that's
the biggest piece for me. Is it's one thing to show them, hey, you're doing great or you're doing poorly, but it's another to take that, especially at the high school level, right? Like you don't get to pick your guys. You can't recruit. You deal with whatever you have. And some years that's awesome. Some years that's okay. But your job is to find ways to win baseball games. So for me to be able to sit down with my high school guys and say, listen, your number overall isn't good, but look at your base running number. Like that's incredible. You're just striking out too much. So here's what we're going to do. You're our new courtesy runner. You're not going to start anymore. You're not productive at the plate, but we can utilize your value and maximize what you're bringing to the table. And the cool thing is you get guys then who maybe wouldn't have a role in other programs that not only have a role in our program, but also find value in their role and see the number growing and like take pride in, even if it's a minor role, they take pride in what they're doing and adding value to the team. So it's been really cool to watch players take hold of that and like take pride in their numbers and metrics.
Yeah. I mean, that's something that they own. I mean, and they control. So I think that's pretty awesome. I mean, so Ohtani broke everything.
Well, we didn't even know how to track it as a two-way, like look at 2 numbers compared to 1 for Jet, like you just can't do it. So he broke.
His stacks would be all over the place.
Oh my gosh. He broke baseball in general, so we don't feel too bad that he's the one to break the system.
Yeah. Do you think we've seen the last of that, or do you think we're going to see more two-way players?
Here's the problem. At the travel level, what we're seeing right now is an influx of kids who now believe that they can two-way at the Division I level. And some can, and some can two-way, but not at the Division I level. But there's so many people that believe that now, rather than realizing that Ohtani is an anomaly of what he's able to do. And for a kid who wants to do both, we don't have an issue with that. Like, do both as long as you can. We love it. Yeah. One of the big things that we try to push is, like, I don't love the term pitcher only. I think that it dilutes the value of what that person is. Because I'm not looking at shortstop, calling him a shortstop only or an outfielder only.
Yep.
So I think when we can get them to buy into the fact, like, you are a pitcher, and that is a huge role on any team that you're a part of. And when you can own that and be that every single day that you show up, obviously you're not pitching every day, but what does that look like on off days? What does that look like when you're on the mound? it just changes their identity of how they see themselves. So the only just takes that value away. It's like, well, I pitch anything else. Like, so what? Your shortstop can't pitch? Like, he's your shortstop. That's why it's a team game.
Right.
So it's tough. It's tough at high level travel because you get, I think on my team, I have 17 guys. I think I have 5 POs or pitchers, and then 12 full position guys. And of those guys, I think 6 or 7 pitch, and they're successful, and that's great. But a lot of them know there's going to be a time, especially if they want to go to the level of college that they're considering. There's going to be a time that they have to make a choice. And I think what kids don't realize is the amount of work it is. You're not doing half of the pitching workouts and half of the hitting. You're just there for 5 hours. You got to do it all. So it's exhausting to do it. And you really have to love every part of that to continue as a two-way in college, let alone at the major league level. That's insane.
Is there any successful like two-way players at D1 and D1 right now?
I don't know if there are right now. I think there was one at IU a couple of years ago that graduated. There's one at Louisville a couple of years ago.
Okay.
But since those guys, I don't know of anybody off the top of my head, at least at the Power 5 level, that has been a successful two-way. And if there are, most of those guys end up being a pitcher DH.
Yeah.
Right. Like, you can't add extra throws to your arm at that point and then go and play a position. Like, it's too hard on the body at that level.
Yeah. You're right. Ohtani broke everything.
Man.
Yeah, it's crazy.
What is incredible. Absolutely incredible.
Well, and honestly, he swings with power, but his swing, like I watched him take a ball out of the park, and you probably saw it during the World Nationals, down on one knee. He took a ball over the fence and from basically one knee. And like, that guy's just wired differently. Who'd you grow up idolizing? Who was your player?
Man, I was an infielder forever. And that's what I train. That's what I teach. But for me, it was always Griffey, even though he's an outfielder.
Oh, that's my man.
The biggest reason is the word that I repeat to my players and my teams all the time is Meraki. And it's a Greek word that means leaving a piece of your soul in what you do. And when you watched Ken Griffey Jr. play baseball, you saw who Ken Griffey Jr. was. You saw the joy, you saw the energy. And that's something that like anybody can latch onto. And something that, I tell my guys all the time, when a college coach comes to watch you play, like show him who you are with how you play. And so Griffey was the best ever in my mind at being that, at least in my era growing up that I was able to be. From the infield side, I was a Nomar guy. I way too many superstitions. He would never make clock in the batting gloves. Like he can't play in today's game. But he wasn't the flashiest shortstop. There was a great era of shortstops, but just solid. He was routine. He always made every single respect and like that's the key to being a quality infielder is just being dependable. You're going to run into some cool plays, but there's too many guys right now that can make the really cool play that can't make the routine play. And then they wonder why they can't stick up the middle. Like the number one, you got to be routine. You got to make routine plays routinely. If you can do that, you can add the extra stuff later on.
That's right. And that's where I see a lot of kids, coaches, everyone is, here's something that I'm seeing right now and help me on this. So I'm watching an 8U team and I'm watching a kid switch hit and every at bat he's switching and I don't see he's not even solid from one side of the plate, right? So his hands, where his basic load, just how he moves his weight is not right at one side.
Sure.
Would you suggest continuing to do both sides? Like if I'm a switch hitter, how do I go about that process? This is something that is blowing my mind.
So it's one of those things, almost like learning a language. It's one of those things that is actually easier to be taught at a younger age because you have developed as much comfortability from one specific side. Okay. So, if you want to do it and they're 8, you deal with those struggles, but there has to be a plan in place of how to teach those mechanics and how to break that down. And if you're not doing that, then they're never going to be good from either side. Yeah. But it's funny because switch hitting used to be this great thing when people were able to do it. But again, it's almost like being a two-way guy because it's not, I'm going to take half the swings from right, half the swings from left. If you want to really develop, you have to do your routine 2 times. You have to do it for your right-handed swing. You're 2 different players at that point in order to be good from both sides. So it's one of those things like I get the value of it. But at the same time, if you can put all of your attention at being really good from one side, I don't see why you wouldn't do that in today's game. And I get it from the softball side of like, hey, I'm really fast. I'm struggling to hit righty. I'm going to become a slapper. Like, great. Totally that. But on the baseball side, like, why not, if you're left-handed, why not just take that time to practice hitting against left-handed pitchers? There's a ton of tools and things that you can use right now to track pitches and do those things. Rather than changing your whole swing, get on Win Reality every day and take time going lefty and getting used to how those pitches move so that it's a non-issue based on the handedness. I just think there's other opportunities that weren't around back then that we now have, that it's going to become obsolete at some point.
Yeah. And honestly, I like to see kids have a foundation. Like, you don't live in a house until there's a foundation. You don't put walls up until there's a foundation. You don't get a bathroom until there's a foundation. And you got to start that. You got to build that foundation. So, and I think that's teaching the kid at least one way to be successful, one way of something to focus and learn on. And most kids at the 8-year-old, or what, I'm using this one kid, but most kids can't process that much, and it's a lot. So
that's the crazy part, because then you go out to any 8U field, any tournament, rec or travel, and those are the loudest games with the most people yelling and the most people trying to tell everybody what to do. And we wonder why they're pump faking 12 times on the field, trying to listen to everybody, and they don't know where to go with the ball. Well, there's too many voices, and I am a big fan of single word or single phrase verbal cues. And going into a game, you can really have one for a hitter, like whatever that is, whatever you've recently been working on. Right now, for my daughter, it's simply get to launch. Like, we've practiced over and over, getting to a good launch position, getting into a scap load, knob going to the catcher, like all the details of it. But then she'll get into a game, and the pitch will come, and she'll just, as quickly as she can, throw her hands through. And it's like, what is that? Like, what are you doing? So that's the only thing when she's hitting right now that I'll say, get to launch. That's simple. Be encouraging. That's fine. But they don't need to hear, well, you're doing this and your hands are doing this. And the more that you can keep the focus on one simple thing, the easier it is for them to comprehend. And on the back end of those games, man, I would love to see the vast majority of parents start to really reinforce, like, how the player acted on the field versus how they physically performed. Because that's where a lot of the negativity comes from these kids, is like, oh, I was 0 for 3 or maybe had an error, and you're yelling at me on the field to get the ball and do all these things. It's like, well, now I feel like you're mad at me, mom and dad, even though, like, I just did my best. And maybe I did stink today, but like, I didn't show up to think like, you know what I should do today? I should suck at baseball. Let's give that a go. Like, that's nobody's head.
Nobody wakes up saying that.
Right. So rather than that, like, I have tried really hard, and it's hard as a coach, right? Because you see all the things and you want to correct all the things, but there's time and place for everything. So I've tried really hard this season with both my kids to just compliment, like, man, I thought you were an awesome teammate today. Like, I saw you pick this kid up. I saw you hustle off when you got out. Like, even when you made a mistake, you got the next one. Like, let's reinforce quality behavior patterns. So that way down the road, we can really dive into talking mechanics and all of those things. But if I don't build that trust and foundation with that relationship first of who they are, and they don't even know who they are, then they're going to start to attach their personal identity to how they play. And I went through that. I don't want anybody else to go through that. Like, those two things need to stay in separate lanes.
Yeah. Well, I know what you asked me earlier, what I saw change with my son. And we started, instead of getting in the car and talking about whether it was a strikeout or whatever it was, like, we only focus on positive, whether it was how he hit his cutoff man from the outfield, whether it was how quick, how much he hustled, how much he helped the kid, on the base that got upset, or on the bench that got upset, whatever it was, we've just found positive. And what I think it's done is this removed the part of failure for him. Like, he's scared of failure, but if I don't talk about it, like, it's not being put in front of his face every single day. And now, like, his cue when he comes up to bat, hey, make sure you show the pitcher some number. Just a simple thing, but because he has a routine of bat, shoulder, bat up, hands up, elbow in, like, I can just say, show me, make sure you show the pitcher some number, because I wanted, the little torque in his waist.
Yep.
And that locks all those other thoughts because it's muscle memory at that point.
Yep.
So,
absolutely. And I think as they get older, the next step from just the positives is what we call the poop sandwich, which is you go
yeah,
positive, negative, positive, right? Like you put that one negative that you really want them to focus on improving in the middle, but you start them with a positive, you end them with a positive, and that way they're more open to hearing the negative because you're also complimenting them in the same. So that's we do that a lot. We train our coaches on that at like the 9U through 11U levels of like, hey, yeah, you can get on your guys a little bit, but like let's make sure that we're still building them up more than we're breaking.
Yeah, because I mean, I think honestly, like I even had a conversation with my son's coach last night, and I'm like, look, dude, he's worried about upsetting parents and yelling too much, and I'm not a yeller as a coach. I'm a talk to you, be very, I'm quick, but I'm like, look, dude, coach my son. That's all I need you to do. And he's like,
Right.
well, maybe I'll go out in the outfield and so I don't have to yell at him. And I'm like, no, dude, you got 9 other kids you got to coach. Like,
right.
just coach them. Like, don't feel like I was like, I'm giving you my son. I want him to be developed. You develop my son the way that you think he needs to be developed. And, and I think that's where a lot of coaches is just gotta, give them good, give them bad, just make them have fun. Like, just have fun, be goofy. Sometimes it's okay. Baseball is a freaking hard game.
It is. It is. I think the struggle with that at the young age groups is you have all these kids who are learning themselves, right? And most of these coaches are parent volunteers who maybe have a background in the game, maybe they don't, and but they're putting themselves out there to try to help and be a volunteer, which is awesome for anybody out there that is doing that. Like that's you're putting yourself in the limelight to take all the crap from all the parents and all the things like it's not always glorious to be that volunteer coach.
It is.
But
it's hard.
But what you hear a lot, and it's so funny now, taking 3 groups through and seeing them now at the college level and seeing like how the parents kind of changed over time and started to understand more and their feedback to their kids. But at the young ages, you get a lot of parents yelling onto the field and trying to help, like the intent's in the right spot, or you get parents that feel like their coach or their kid needs to be coached differently. I need you to yell at my kid more. I need you to get on him more. And I always fall back to like, I'm not a big yeller. And I coach high school baseball where I could be if I really wanted to be. But if the intent is to build relationships and get the best out of players, then my job is to get to know my players well enough to know how they need to be coached. And it's the difference in fair and equal. Like I am not an equal coach. Not everybody is going to get screamed at when they screw up. And not everybody's going to get my arm around them when they screw up. But I am fair. They're all going to hear about the things that they did. And my job is to coach them in a way that's going to elicit the best result. And as they get older, parents start to see that more. But I think at the young age groups, like giving coaches who have stepped up and volunteered the space to truly coach without your opinions on, how they need to be coached or what that should look like visibly, I think is a huge key to any high level team that's going to stay together over the course of time. Is like no coach can be a great coach without the freedom to coach. And with freedom comes freedom to be more successful, but also freedom to try things and fail. Like that's part of freedom is failure. And if we're going to try to give freedom to our players to do those things, then we need to give freedom to our coaches to also do those things and understand like I might try to plan this perfect practice and it might go haywire and it stinks. Well, now I know like I'm not doing that again, but give them the space to screw up and fail. They're trying to get better too. And it's a learning curve for all of us. Like there's no such thing as a perfect coach. We're all getting better. And I think the quickest way to know that a coach is a bad coach is if they believe themselves to be a perfect coach. Like at that point, they're so fixed in their thought process that like there is no growth. And it's clearly not a place that like personally I would want my kids playing at that point. Like I need somebody going to not only tell the kids what they need to do, but model those same behaviors in their coaching journey.
Well, and I think that's how you start to really build trust with those kids is you realize going back to what you said is, every kid's not going to get the scream. Every kid's not going to get the arm around the shoulder. Every kid wants to be coached differently. Every kid has, and that's when you identify that, that's when you burn that kid's trust. And that's when they start really listening. It's because when you treat them like all the rest of the 10 players or 15, you're not going to build their trust. And they know that you know them, you got them.
Absolutely.
That's awesome,
Absolutely.
man. I love what you guys are doing up there. And I ain't never had any plans to come to Indianapolis, but man, that makes me want to come up and watch some of this
Let's
stuff,
go. Come on
man.
to work.
Hey
I would
man,
love it.
I had to Reno the end of this week, so I'll have to I have to book that on the end of the month. So
Yeah,
well, very cool, man. Well, man, I want to thank you so much. I would love to have you back.
for sure.
I'd love to have you back with a couple players.
Yeah,
And honestly, like let's go through some of the situational, some of the mindset training with some of the kids. I think that would be really cool for people to hear and for some of the kids to get an idea of what's out there and how people can help. So
absolutely. Would
I
love
think
to do that.
yeah, I think that would be a really cool, not so much as an experiment, but hey, like this is just how easy it can be. Like
Yeah,
you don't have to have, a crazy MD to do some of this stuff. Look, let's just put
right.
it out here and teach. So,
Yep.
well, man, I got one question left for you. We ask every guest that comes on the show this question, so it's the most important, man. You walking up to bat tomorrow, today. What's going to be your walkout song, Jake?
Ooh, the walkout. So this is funny because I'm like a big routine guy, right? So
Yeah.
I actually have my own pregame car list that I
Okay.
go every single game on my way to the field. So for me, it's "Dare You to Doubt Me" by The Script. It's not like
Okay.
super banger or anything, but there's some verses in there that are just like real meaningful and get me hyped to. It's funny because the song is about proving others wrong,
Yeah.
but I'm a big believer that like the focus isn't about proving anybody wrong; it's about proving yourself right. Don't put your success in other people's hands. So like there's a couple verses in there that are all about like how you're self-made and how you bounce back and how you step up with the same mentality every single day regardless of what you've gone through. So like that would get my mind right stepping in. And I'm telling you, you give me a game, I'm going 1 for 4 with the tater and 3 Ks. I am taking hacks. If I get one more, I'm going up there and I'm swinging for it, baby. I might connect with
Hey,
one. I'm okay with a couple Ks at my age.
hey, I grew up loving Conseco, so I saw a
There
lot of
you
K's and a lot of
go.
taters.
There
So
you
I,
go.
Conseco was my man, and so I got used to seeing a lot of K's from him. So awesome,
uh,
man. Well, Jake, man, any last thing you want to make sure our listeners know about you?
So I would say if you've heard anything that you want to hear more of, would love to have you guys follow me on socials. Instagram and TikTok are the same. It's just Coach Banwart 20.
Okay.
I have absolutely loved this. You let me know when you got players and you want me to come back. I will
Yeah,
absolutely do that, and I'm sure we'll stay connected. It's funny that the community within baseball feels large for a while, and then you start connecting with people and you realize like it's a pretty close knit group of
it
people.
is.
So I'm just thankful to build this connection with you and have an opportunity to chat.
Yeah. Are you going to the ABCA next year?
I will be there. Yes,
All right.
sir.
Were you at this past year?
I was.
Okay,
Yep.
I miss Nashville, but man, I regret it. I'll be in Dallas this year, so
It was
uh,
awesome. We got to work together. We can get an Avengers type group to
yeah,
all podcast together. I can get some other mindset people, and I think that'd be awesome. So
yeah,
we'll sure.
very cool, man. Well, hey, man, you get back out on the field, take care of those players, and if you need anything from us, just let us know, okay?
Sounds good.
And for everyone out there listening, thank you for hanging in, learning a little bit from Coach Jake, and until next time, we'll catch you on the slide.